Welcome to Tom's True Crime. In today's episode, we unravel the chilling story of love, jealousy, and betrayal that ended in tragedy. Wednesday, June 17, 2015, Tallahassee, Florida. A frantic woman rushed into the sheriff's station, her clothes covered in blood. The woman said the horror began when she had walked into her friend's garage. It was dark and she tripped on something. She fell. There was blood everywhere. Her friend was lying face up on the garage floor next to her car. The woman making the report was Sienna Reick. Police took photos of her that night while the blood was still on her. The victim, she told deputies, was her childhood friend Madeline Quinell, or Maddie. Homicide detectives David Spotch and Leo Petch made their way to Maddie's house. The house was large, about 3,500 square feet in a nice area of Tallahassee. Maddie and her boyfriend Tom Setkur had bought the house together about a year earlier. They were still in the process of decorating it. As they worked their way through the home, nothing seems to be out of place until they got to the living room. It was obvious a rug had been removed. In the laundry, there were bloody towels on the floor. The room was in disarray. There was blood on the floor. Detectives made their way from the laundry to the garage. On the floor was towels with blood on them and trash bags filled with blood-stained bed sheets. The victim's car was backed in the garage and the trunk was open. Detectives walk around the car and find Maddie's body on the ground. 28-year-old Madeline Quinell was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause, a gunshot wound to the back of the head. The sergeant who had taken Sienna's statement arrived at the crime scene to brief the detectives. Sienna described hearing somebody walking around inside the house upstairs. She realized the killer could still be in the house and she was terrified. She said that she saw a man coming down the stairs. She immediately recognized him. It was Maddie's boyfriend, Tom Setkur. They had been together for about 3 years. Sienna said she ran out the door like a bat out of hell. Detectives discovered Tom Setkur and Sienna Reick's relationship was not going well. Sienna had accused Tom of trying to run her off the road. Detectives Spotch and Petch were trying to piece together the murder of nurse Maddie Quinell. It was a tragic end for a woman dedicated to helping others. Madeline Quinell grew up in California, known among friends for her caring, friendly personality and optimistic outlook on life. She was ambitious, working diligently through nursing school. Maddie met Tom Setkur through a mutual friend, and their love blossomed quickly. They were inseparable, dating for several years before moving in together. While Tom, 30, worked in construction, Maddie pursued her career at a local clinic. In 2015, they purchased a house together in Tallahassee, with plans for marriage on the horizon. However, their initial bliss faded over time, and the relationship became strained. They were fighting, and Maddie had talked about ending the relationship. They were arguing about finances. Maddie had told friends that she and Tom were no longer intimate, and that was right around the time Maddie was murdered. Tom Setkur had a dark side that people didn't know about. He was a very jealous and controlling person. Those closest to Maddie told detectives that Tom kept close track of Maddie. Detectives were told by several people that Tom would get Maddie's phone, and he'd go through it to see who texted her. He would call numbers he didn't recognize. He would go to her work at lunchtime to see who she went to lunch with. He would check to see if she was at work and not out with some guy. In April, just a few months before Maddie's murder, sheriff's deputies responded to a domestic disturbance call at Maddie and Tom's home. It hadn't gotten physical, so no charges were filed. After her murder, Maddie's mom, Ruby, told detectives about a troubling incident that same month. Maddie called Ruby and said Tom tried to run her off the road. She was screaming. The argument had started at home. Maddie told Tom that she was leaving him, and she left in her car, and Tom chased her in his truck and tried to run her off the road. Tom crashed into the side of Maddie's car, the impact shattering the window into a spray of flying glass. This incident, occurring just before Maddie's murder, immediately thrust Tom Setkur to the forefront of the detective suspect list. However, detectives soon uncovered that Tom wasn't the only person of interest. Despite Tom's concerning behavior, which included possessiveness and jealousy, it was revealed he might have had legitimate reasons for his actions. Unbeknownst to many, there was another significant figure in Maddie's life, adding complexity to the investigation. This other man's presence raised questions about potential motives and connections to Maddie's tragic end. As detectives delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Maddie's death, they began piecing together a narrative of tangled relationships and conflicting emotions. Tom's jealousy and possessiveness were not unfounded, but rather rooted in a complex web of interactions and dynamics that had evolved over time. The investigation, now broadened to include multiple angles and suspects, sought to untangle the threads of Maddie's life and relationships. Each lead and revelation brought new insights into the events leading up to her untimely demise, shedding light on the depths of human emotion and the consequences of unchecked passion. As the case unfolded, detectives navigated through a maze of conflicting testimonies, circumstantial evidence, and personal histories intertwined with grief and suspicion. The truth, obscured by layers of emotion and complexity, remained elusive, leaving detectives to piece together the puzzle of Maddie's final moments and the events that preceded them. Amidst the investigation's twists and turns, one thing remained clear: the quest for justice for Maddie Quinell, a woman whose life was marked by dedication and kindness, now overshadowed by unanswered questions surrounding her tragic demise. 6 a.m. the morning after Madeline Quinell's murder, detectives were speaking with their most helpful witness, Maddie's friend Sienna. She had spent all night at the sheriff's station. Detectives didn't know much about Sienna Reick at that point, other than the fact that she was supposed to be a very good friend of Madeline Quinell. She also knew Tom Setkur, the boyfriend. Sienna told detectives she and Maddie met in high school. Now she lived near Maddie and Tom and said she saw firsthand how the couple's fighting had escalated in the days leading up to the murder. Sienna said it was because Tom had found out about Brad. Maddie and Brad were having an affair for 3 months. They met online, one of those no-strings-attached, extramarital affair type of site. Brad worked in Jacksonville as a lawyer, and he would see Maddie on his days off. He would also visit whenever Tom wasn't around. Detectives learned that a couple of months before the murder, Tom overheard Maddie and Brad talking on the phone and became furious. Brad said he could hear Tom screaming on the other end of the line. Brad was so concerned that he called 911. The local sheriff's department responded, and they resolved it without an arrest being made. That did not settle it, Sienna said. Sienna told detectives the couple continued to argue right up until the week Maddie died. Maddie and Tom got into a fight Monday. He was in her face, and Maddie was murdered on Wednesday. Maddie said she had scratched Tom. Sienna told detectives the day before Maddie's murder, Tom learned about a secret phone she was carrying. There was a cell phone Brad had given to Maddie so they could communicate secretly. Sienna said a big argument ensued with Maddie promising to end the affair with Brad. This classic love triangle prompted detectives to question Brad about his whereabouts at the time of Maddie's murder. Brad provided a solid alibi, as he was representing a client in court, effectively clearing him as a suspect. With Brad ruled out, detectives refocused their attention on Tom Setkur, Maddie's boyfriend. Detectives speculated that Tom's motive might have been driven by a desire to eliminate his romantic rival. Both Tom and Brad were vying for Maddie's affection, which led investigators to prioritize determining Tom's activities on the final day of Maddie's life. Understanding Tom's whereabouts and actions became crucial in piecing together the events leading up to Maddie's tragic death. Sienna told detectives Tom was home when she arrived sometime after 9:30 in the morning. She was going shopping with Maddie later that day. An hour later, Sienna mentioned that Tom was driving over to her boyfriend's house, which was an hour and a half away, to have his truck repaired. But Tom would return, the secret cell phone problem rearing its ugly head again. It turns out Tom had taken the secret cell phone with him, even though it was supposed to be dead. Imagine his reaction when he discovered it wasn't. Somebody has added minutes to it. So Tom turns around and goes back to confront Maddie with this newfound information, because now he's got proof that Maddie is continuing the affair with Brad. Tom shows up around 11:30. An argument ensues. Why is that phone turned on? You promised me that it was going to be off. Maddie snatched the phone from Tom. Then she and Sienna decided to get out of the house. They drove to a nearby store. At 12:05 p.m., shop security video caught the last images of Maddie Quinell. She's there for 10 minutes, leaving the store at 12:15. Tom had trailed them to the store. According to Sienna's account to the detectives, the two continued their argument until Maddie eventually handed the cell phone back to Tom, which helped calm him down. Upon returning to the house, the fight reignited. After approximately an hour of continued arguing, Sienna decided she had had enough and left for a nearby park. She stayed there for a few hours before returning to Maddie's house at around 5:30 p.m. and discovering Maddie's dead body. At which point she sees Tom at the top of the stairs. Sienna said she ran out to her car in a panic and couldn't find her cell phone to call 911. So she drove straight to the sheriff's station. She also said Tom was chasing her in his truck. Sienna told detectives that Tom stopped following her as she got closer to the sheriff's station. So the search for Tom Setkur was on. Detectives located him at Maddie's mother's home sleeping. Tom comes out of the house, agreeable and cooperative. While a squad car drove Tom to the sheriff's station, Detective Leo Petch gave Maddie's mom the terrible news that her daughter had been murdered. She got very emotional. The questioning of Tom Setkur began. Detective asked Tom, "What's your girlfriend's name?" Tom said, "Maddie Quinell." "Why? What's going on?" Detective said, "You don't know." Tom replied, "No, I left the house to go fix my car." Tom admitted he returned to the house and that he did follow Maddie and Sienna to the store. But then he said he met up with Sienna's boyfriend, which was 90 minutes away, and spent the afternoon at auto supply stores before driving to Maddie's mother's house where he slept. Maddie's mother stated that her son had observed Tom on the computer that evening, conducting financial transactions and searching for flights to Seattle. The detectives had a hunch that Tom might be planning to flee. As he sat across from the detectives in the interview room, Tom was on the verge of further incriminating himself. Detectives questioned Tom about his relationship with Maddie, asking if they were happy together. Tom responded affirmatively, stating their relationship was fine. When asked if she felt the same, Tom mentioned she frequently expressed her love for him. He said that there were no issues. He loved Maddie. Maddie loved him. She wasn't seeing anybody else. Everything was perfect. Detectives noticed that Tom has a scratch on the side of his face on his cheek. When questioned, Tom said Maddie had scratched him when they got into an argument. He downplayed the argument, saying it was nothing. Maddie had gotten jealous because Maddie saw him on Facebook and thought he was communicating with a girl. Detectives then asked Tom about Brad, the man Maddie had been having an affair with. Tom said that Brad was a friend and was unaware of any romantic relationship between Maddie and Brad. After about 30 minutes of interviewing, detectives told Tom that Maddie had been shot and killed. Detectives asked Tom why he had done it. Tom said he didn't do anything like that. Tom was genuinely inconsolable. Despite this, evidence pointed to him, and he was arrested for the murder of Maddie Quinell. The only thing missing was forensic evidence. Tom didn't own a gun. Detectives went back to the crime scene. Inside the garage, they found a pair of latex gloves with blood on them, a plastic container with a bloody fingerprint. Inside Maddie's car, there was a pillow in the trunk that had a bullet hole in it. Around the bullet hole was stippling, which is unburned gunpowder. That means the pillow had been used to muffle the sound of the gunshot. A large rug with a bloody footprint on it was found in the back seat of the car. Even though there is a lot of evidence in the garage, detectives believe Maddie wasn't shot in there. They believe she was shot in the living room, so they performed a luminol test searching for blood. The floor in the living room lit up, showing a trail of blood that started in the living room. Then the body was dragged across the carpet to the kitchen, across the kitchen floor, the hallway, the laundry, and into the garage. In the living room, a single empty shell casing was found. The forensics team collected the evidence and sent it for analysis. Detectives expected the evidence to point to Tom. Then a grainy security video changes everything, and detectives realize they're on the wrong path. Tom Setkur was in county lockup accused of murdering Maddie. The alleged motive is that he was jealous and didn't want the relationship to end. Detectives were building their case, which meant looking at Tom's alibi. Tom said that around the time of Maddie's murder, he was about 90 minutes away in Blountstown buying auto parts. So detectives went to the auto parts store to see their security video. And there was Tom Setkur at 2:50 p.m. He was seen in an AutoZone, then later at an Advance Auto Parts store, then back at AutoZone. Detectives realized Tom couldn't have done it. Something is wrong. The witness story is not matching with the evidence. The search for the truth and a killer is on. What detectives end up discovering will blow their minds. It was a plot so sinister, so stunning, it took even seasoned detectives by surprise. Detectives needed to check Tom's call phone records. They showed Maddie called Tom at 2:30 p.m. that day. It was the last time anyone heard from her. By the time her mom called her at 4 p.m., Maddie was no longer answering her phone. Based on the evidence, there is no way Tom was in Tallahassee at the time Sienna said he was. Tom was not at the top of the staircase and chased Sienna down, and there's no way he could have committed the murder. After a month in jail, Tom Setkur was released. Detectives were back to square one. They started with their first witness, Maddie's friend, Sienna. She says she leaves Maddie's house at 1:25 in the afternoon, and she goes to a park that's about a mile away. Sienna said she'd gone to the park because Tom and Maddie were fighting. And this is the middle of June, so it's hot, and the 90s are 100. Sienna said she returned to Maddie's house around 5:30 p.m. That meant she was in the park in the heat for almost 4 hours. Detective asked her, "What are you doing at the park?" She said that she sat there watching the children play. Another strange thing detectives noticed, the morning after the murder, Sienna encountered Maddie's mom, Ruby, in the hallway of the sheriff's office. Sienna approached and hugged Ruby Quinell. After Sienna was escorted away down the hallway, Ruby Quinell turned to the detectives and inquired, "Who is that woman?" The detectives responded, "That's your daughter's best friend. They've known each other since high school." Ruby remarked, "I've never seen her before. There is more." The night Sienna rushed into the sheriff's office, deputies found 2 bullets in her purse. So Detective Spotch checked the state registry to see if Sienna owned a gun, and he found nothing. Detectives brought Sienna in again and began to question her story. She was asked, "Did you kill Maddie?" Sienna denied it. She said she had no reason to kill Maddie. She said she loved Maddie. About a week after that interview, Detective Spotch once again ran Sienna's name through the same state database. This time he got a hit. Sienna owned the same caliber gun that had killed Maddie, a 9mm. Sienna had purchased a 9mm Smith & Wesson semi-automatic pistol on February the 17th of 2015. That was 4 months before the murder. So if Sienna is the killer, what is the motive? Why did she do it? 4 months after the murder, detectives uncovered a crucial detail from Sienna's cell phone records that revealed she had misled them. Contrary to her initial claims, Sienna and Maddie had not known each other since high school. They had only met a few weeks before the murder. This revelation raised questions about what transpired in those brief weeks, leading to Maddie Quinell's tragic end. As the investigation progressed in the months following Maddie's murder, law enforcement focused their attention on Sienna Reick. Once detectives obtained Sienna's cell phone records, inconsistencies in her story became apparent. It was discovered that Sienna and Maddie had connected through Craigslist. Sienna had placed an advertisement in the personal section "Women Seeking Women," and Maddie had responded to it. And they had a friendship that evolved into a romantic relationship, becoming sexually involved. Tom remained unaware of this development. However, just a few weeks after their relationship began, Maddie decided to end it. This decision occurred 5 days before Maddie's murder, conveyed in a text where Maddie expressed her desire to remain friends. "I'm getting serious with my boyfriend, and I no longer want anything sexual with you. I value our friendship and would like to keep it that way." Sienna replied, "I understand. I'm cool with just being friends." Detectives believe that breakup set Sienna Reick on a murderous course, and she killed the woman who'd broken up with her. Sienna was the killer, not Tom. Armed with an arrest warrant, investigators got to work tracking down Sienna. Surveillance teams worked around the clock but came up empty. Sienna was on the run. 4 months, detectives searched for her to no avail. After nearly a year, someone called in a tip to America's Most Wanted. Sienna had been spotted in Mexico. She was arrested and brought back to the U.S. in handcuffs. August 2020, more than 5 years after Maddie's death, Sienna stood trial for her murder. Prosecutor Peter Johnson painted a very different picture of the woman who at first seemed so helpful to police. The way the prosecutors went about it was to show Sienna Reick's true character, which was someone who was extraordinarily infatuated with Madeline Quinell. So much so Sienna started impersonating Maddie when she was dating other women. That was shown by the 2 different women that Sienna dated. One saying that she took over Madeline's name. Posing as Madeline, Sienna met a woman named Katie. Sienna told Katie that she had just purchased a red Mercedes, which is the car Maddie owned. Sienna took over Maddie's persona. Sienna wanted to be Maddie, successful, professional, respected. In contrast, Sienna, who was 32 years old, had not held a steady job in years. She has not achieved anything and a net worth less than 0. She saw Maddie as someone who could provide her with a better life. And when that was taken away from her, she lashed out and decided to kill Maddie to punish her. Prosecutors said that on the afternoon of Madeline Quinell's murder, Sienna never went to that park. Instead, she stayed behind. Maddie called Tom at 2:30 p.m. and they spoke. Detectives believe it was shortly after that call that Sienna grabbed that pillow, held it to the back of Maddie's head and executed her. Then, Sienna dragged her body into the garage. The plan was to put the body in the trunk, drive somewhere, and dump the body or leave the car. That plan changed when she couldn't lift the body into the trunk. They call it dead weight for a reason. Also, Sienna's boyfriend called her to tell her that Tom has left his house and on his way home. So Sienna has limited time. She had a light bulb moment. She'll pin it on Tom. She drove to the sheriff's station and told him, "I saw who did it. It was Tom. There is just one problem." She didn't know Tom wasn't returning to the house. He was going to Maddie's mom's house. That is the only thing that tripped her up. She was so close to getting away with murder. At trial, prosecutors presented the forensic evidence. Sienna's DNA and fingerprints were found on the evidence collected. Perhaps the most damning evidence was the bullets found in her purse. The 2 live rounds matched the extraction marks on the expended casing at the crime scene. This indicated that all 3 bullets had been inside the murder weapon at the same time. When it came time for the defense, Sienna's attorneys argued detectives had it right the first time, and Tom was the murderer. Jurors were not fooled. They found Sienna guilty of first-degree murder. She's serving 50 years to life. The verdict and sentencing brought a sense of justice to Maddie's family and friends. While the pain of losing her would never fully heal, they found solace in knowing that Sienna would pay for her crime. The community, too, felt a measure of relief as the trial's conclusion marked the end of a dark chapter. The lives of those involved in Madeline Quinell's case slowly began to move forward. Tom Setkur, Maddie's live-in boyfriend, struggled deeply with her death and his suspicion as a suspect. Tom is married and has a son. He shudders at how close he came to being wrongfully convicted and locked up in prison for life. A friend of Maddie's named Julia still cherishes her memory. Julia expressed how much she misses Maddie and honors her by naming her daughter after her. She hopes to keep Maddie's spirit alive through her daughter, wishing for her to grow up to be as amazing as Maddie Quinell was. Maddie was a woman who believed in helping people and was known for her strong work ethic. Julia hopes her daughter can embody those qualities as well. Madeline Quinell's tragic death had a profound impact on everyone involved. While justice was served, the pain of her loss lingered. The community's efforts to honor her memory and support each other highlighted the resilience and strength that emerged in the wake of such a devastating event. Madeline Quinell's life was tragically cut short by the deceit and desperation of those she trusted most. Her story highlights the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of betrayal. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tom's True Crime. If you are interested in more in-depth investigations into the most perplexing crimes, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. What are your thoughts about this case? Please share them with us in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe.